Another important aspect to feminism and protecting the human rights of women and girls is to think about the ways in which violations of human rights and the protection of human rights affects all areas of our lives. So this applications of feminism and feminist work take place in the legal sphere, so protecting the legal rights of women and girls. This can be through many different avenues. Right now, we're working with a student who is pursuing a bill passing through the California state legislature to ban marriage for people under 18. There is a big problem with early forced child marriage, even in the US, and that's something that GLI is proud to work on with that student. We are, as the Feminist Majority Foundation, we are also, of course, working on protecting the reproductive rights of women and ensuring that women have access to reproductive health care. So there are a number of different ways that the Feminist Majority Foundation works to protect the legal rights of women and girls. Of course, human rights also takes place in our interpersonal lives and in our relationships. And so we want to think about how feminism can benefit relationships between people of all genders as well.
So the Office of Women's Policy works to ensure that the programs, policies, and practices in Santa Clara County are equitable, gender responsive, and support the advancement of women and girls. Our strategies include bringing a gender lens to policy decision making, building a pipeline to leadership, and demanding equity in governance. Now, with an overarching goal of gender equity, we focus on 4 main areas, and those include women's economic advancement, addressing gender-based violence, women and girls leadership, and finally addressing women and girls in the criminal justice system.
So I teach women's studies, as I said, and I have a blog. It's called Broad Blogs, if you want to check it out. And it's based on this. My background is in sociology with a focus on gender and social psychology. And so what I was just talking about in terms of the subtle things, the language getting into your mind, living in a world where typically the main character is a man, those kinds of things, they're really subtle. And people they're not even aware that they're noticing that men are the main character, or how our language makes us think that women are lesser than. So that's just one example. But what I try and do is I try to get people outside of their boxes. I try to get them to see things that are unconscious, that they haven't noticed before. And so those are the kinds of things that I mostly focus on, both in my teaching, in my classroom, and in my blog. So it's just really important when people begin to recognize something that had been unconscious, then you're able to criticize it, and then you're able to make change.
And I belong to Amnesty International, and they have started, I think about 5 years ago, a project called My Body, Our Rights. And the idea is that women should have control over their bodies. And these, all over the world, these decisions are being stopped sometimes by laws, sometimes by rulers, sometimes by culture, and we're working very hard to make sure that women have rights in these areas. And it's a little bit controversial. For example, one of the areas we're starting with is in Ireland. We are trying to get rid of their law that's against contraceptives, birth control pills, and the pill afterwards. And we haven't succeeded, but we're still working very, very hard in this. And then we also are working in several parts of northern Africa, trying to also allow birth control and stop genital manipulation and destruction. And I think these are the areas that we're working, that many leaders can understand. And so when they come to the United Nations, we work with the United Nations to work on these projects. We also are educating women and trying to make sure in various countries that all girls go to school. We are somewhat successful with that, sometimes not. It's gotten worse with the Syrian refugees. They're not going to school. Afghanistan is getting worse. That is a real problem. In the United States, Amnesty has been under some controversy because Amnesty United States has taken on the project of making sure that prostitutes or sex workers their rights are respected. And there are many laws on the books that hurt the sex workers. That's a real problem. So we want to make sure that they have rights they can go to clinics so they don't get diseases. And also there are many sex workers that say, listen, you have to protect also the pimps, because it's a very gray area of who's a pimp and who's a sex worker, because the cultural is so confused at the time. A woman might, in one situation, be a sex worker. On the other hand, she might be pimping out, if you will, her roommate, so that they both can make money to live. This is one reason to do it. But also, women are very afraid to get free of their pimp if they think the pimp will beat them up, or if the pimp will then take them to, he'll go to jail if she turns him in, and that's what they're afraid of. So that's an issue. It's a very strong issue, and that was a real problem in Amnesty International at a couple of the conventions, because some people didn't want to support pimps and others thought it was okay. So these things, what happens. Some countries we know don't punish sex workers, and they have free injection sites. They have places where women sex workers and men too, I suppose, can be checked and make sure that they have good health and approval of good health. That's a different culture.
MSOI basically tries to promote the equality of women through education. As I said, we have a one-year program at MSOI called the pre-secondary program, which takes girls from primary school and works with them and tries to prepare them for secondary school. And this preparation includes academic preparation, filling in the gaps of what they didn't learn in primary school, socialization, so that they know they're not just dealing with people from their one village. They start to realize there are many different villages, there are even different regions, and in all the one country of Tanzania. There's a psychological sense of widening their minds so that they have some idea of what the world is about. After this, then they go on to secondary school, and which would be mixed boarding schools. In this year, we also have life skills. So the girls are learning about themselves, about leadership, about their rights, about their biology, all of this, so that they're better prepared to become young adults in this changing world. We encourage them. The student body, of course, is all girls, but we encourage them to think and to speak out and to ask questions. So trying to develop these skills within the girls. They also think about their own culture. and to try to encourage them to have a critical mind, to be thinking of what is good in their culture, because there are many things that are very good, but what needs to be changed, what needs to be tweaked so that it's not oppressive, because in many ways the culture can be considered oppressive to women.
So our organization, Voices of Women for Change, is a nonprofit 501c organization, and our main goal is to empower women to overcome gender-based barriers by consciousness raising and advocacy. And in order to do that, we developed this different committees that works on different aspects of, different range of issues that impacts women. For example, we have a website that is a news website basically, and we disseminate information about women and women's news, and we post it in there. And sometimes we may have petitions that we're trying to get the community activated to sign a petition in order to accomplish a goal. But one of the main areas that we're focusing right now is to accomplish CEDAW. Now, CEDAW stands for Convention on Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women. It's a long phrase, but basically it's a UN treaty that started in 1979, and it was adopted by the United Nations during one of the General Assemblies. And it's the most comprehensive women's Bill of Rights. And since then, it's been adopted by 189 countries. Unfortunately, there are a few countries who have not signed on to it, and one of them is the United States. And because of that, and because it was so important to be able to adopt the principles of CEDAW in this country, there was a new movement that started in March 2014. And basically that movement was to aim at local governments and cities to adopt the principle of CEDAW in those cities, and the goal was to get 100 cities to sign on to it. We as an organization, we reached out to other women's organizations, civil rights organizations, and human rights organizations, and we developed this task force we call it Silicon Valley CEDAW Task Force, and our main goal is to adopt the principles of CEDAW in the city of San Jose. And but before I go there, I just want to explain to you that there are already some cities that have passed a resolution and an ordinance adopting principles of CEDAW. The very first city that passed the ordinance was the city of San Francisco in 1998. And then there are other cities that followed, such as Los Angeles and Berkeley and Miami. There are many other cities that are actively involved in pursuing CEDAW. Now for us, we started lobbying the local government, the city of San Jose. So we've had meetings with city council members, we've had meeting with the vice mayor of San Jose, and we're trying to work with them so we can get their support to agree to adopting the principles of CEDAW. And it's a long journey, but we're going to be working on it until it happens, because obviously once the ordinance passes for city of San Jose, then there are other things that need to happen. For example, there has to be a gender analysis. There has to be some funding to fund all these programs that are going to be using the gender lens. And then there has to be an oversight body. But we are working on it, and we're hopeful. There's about 18 organizations who have signed on to it, and we're still approaching other organizations to get their support. And it's gaining momentum. This is a movement that's gaining momentum, and I'm very hopeful about that.
Well, in regard to Amnesty International, the story there is very positive, because the women are playing prominent roles in Amnesty International. The person that is now the executive director of Amnesty International is a woman, and when I look at the roles in the staff area of Amnesty, Amnesty is doing a very, very good job as far as women's role in jobs that they are doing. If you look at Amnesty, the women are doing a great job, and they're also there's no discrimination in my view in regard to Amnesty's work and people working for Amnesty. And that also goes for the volunteer section. I feel in society women are more willing to take on volunteer roles than men do. And you'll see that in Amnesty, the women have a very prominent role in the volunteer ranks. For example, you're going to be working on our website for our group. You're a woman, and also the person that you're going to work with is a specialist in this area of the technical things associated with the website. In our group, we have an Amnesty group. The women are much more represented in that Amnesty group than men are. So this is just an example where women have a willingness to work, and certainly Amnesty is there to accommodate them in doing what they're doing.